The Dhammapada. Introduction. From ancient times to the present, the Dhammapada has been regarded as the most succinct expression of the Buddha's teaching found in the Pali Canon, and the chief spiritual testament of early Buddhism. In the countries following Theravada Buddhism, such as Sri Lanka, Burma, and Thailand, the influence of the Dhammapada is ubiquitous. It is an ever-alive source of themes for sermons and discussions, a guidebook for resolving the countless problems of everyday life, a primer for the instruction of novices in the monasteries. Even the experienced contemplative, withdrawn to forest hermitage or mountainside cave for a life of meditation, can be expected to count a copy of the book among his few material possessions. Yet the admiration the Dhammapada has elicited has not been confined to avowed followers of Buddhism. Wherever it has become known, its moral earnestness, realistic understanding of human life, aphoristic wisdom, and stirring message of a way to freedom from suffering have won for it the devotion and veneration of those responsive to the good and the true. The expounder of the verses that comprise the Dhammapada is the Indian sage called the Buddha, an honorific title meaning the enlightened one or the awakened one. The story of this venerable personage has often been overlaid with literary embellishment and the admixture of legend, but the historical essentials of his life are simple and clear. He was born in the 6th century BC, the son of a king ruling over a small state in the Himalayan foothills in what is now Nepal. His given name was Siddartha, and his family name Gautama. In Sanskrit, it is Siddhartha Gautama. Raised in luxury, groomed by his father to be the heir to the throne, in his early manhood he went through a deeply disturbing encounter with sufferings of life, as a result of which he lost all interest in the pleasures and privileges of rulership. One night in his 29th year, he fled the royal city and entered the forest to live as an ascetic, resolved to find a way to deliverance from suffering. For 6 years, he experimented with different systems of meditation and subjected himself to severe austerities, but found that these practices did not bring him any closer to his goal. Finally, in his 35th year, while sitting in deep meditation beneath a tree in Gaya, he attained supreme enlightenment and became, in the proper sense of the title, the Buddha, the Enlightened One. Thereafter, for 45 years, he traveled throughout northern India, proclaiming the truths he had discovered and founding an order of monks and nuns to carry on his message. At the age of 80, after a long and fruitful life, he passed away peacefully in the small town of Kusinara, surrounded by a large number of disciples. To his followers, the Buddha is neither a god nor a divine incarnation, nor a prophet bearing a message of divine revelation, but a human being who, by his own striving and intelligence, has reached the highest spiritual attainment of which man is capable, that is, perfect wisdom, full enlightenment, and complete purification of the mind. His function in relation to humanity is that of a teacher, a world teacher, of who, out of compassion, points to the others the way to nibbana, or nirvana, that is, final release from suffering, or enlightenment. His teaching, known as the Dhamma, offers a body of instructions explaining the true nature of existence and showing the path that leads to liberation. Free from all dogmas and inscrutable claims to authority, the Dhamma is founded solidly upon the bedrock of the Buddha's own clear comprehension of reality, and it leads the one who practices it to that same understanding, the knowledge that extricates the roots of suffering. The title Dhammapada, which the ancient compilers of the Buddhist scriptures attached to this anthology, means portions, aspects, or sections of Dhamma. The work given this title because in its 26 chapters it spans the multiple aspects of the Buddha's teaching, offering a variety of standpoints from which to gain a glimpse into his heart. Whereas the longer discourses of the Buddha contained in the prose sections of the canon usually proceed methodically, unfolding according to the sequential structure of the doctrine, the Dhammapada lacks any such systematic arrangement. The work is simply a collection of inspirational or pedagogical verses on the fundamentals of the teaching, to be used as a basis for direct experience, edification, and instruction. The teachings of the Buddha, viewed in their completeness, all fit together into a single, perfectly coherent system of thought and practice, which gains its unity from its final goal, the attainment of deliverance from suffering. But the teachings inevitably emerge from the human condition as their matrix and starting point, and therefore must be expressed in such a way as to reach human beings standing at different levels of spiritual development, with their highly diverse problems, ends, and concerns, and with their very different capacities for understanding. The first is the human good here and now. This first level of instruction found in the Dhammapada is addressed to the need to establish human well-being and happiness in the immediately visible sphere of concrete human relations. The aim at this level is to show us the way to live at peace with ourselves and our fellows, to fulfill our family and social responsibilities, and to restrain the bitterness, conflict, and violence which infest human relationships and bring such immense suffering to the individual, society, and the world as a whole. The most general counsel the Dhammapada gives is to avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to cleanse one's mind. But to dispel any doubts the disciple might entertain as to what one should avoid and what one should cultivate, other verses provide more specific directives. One should avoid irritability in deed, word, and thought, and exercise self-control. One should adhere to the 5 precepts, the fundamental moral code of Buddhism, which teach abstinence from destroying life, from stealing, from committing adultery, from speaking lies, and from taking intoxicants. One who violates these 5 training rules digs up his own roots even in this very world. The disciple should treat all beings with kindness and compassion, live honestly and righteously, control sensual desire, speak the truth, and live a sober, upright life, diligently fulfilling his duties. The second section, the good in future lives. In this second level of teaching, the Dhammapada shows that morality does not exhaust its significance in its contribution to human happiness here and now, but exercises a far more critical influence in molding personal destiny. In the popular understanding, kama or karma is sometimes identified with fate, but this is a total misconception, utterly inapplicable to the Buddhist doctrine. Kama means volitional action, action springing from intention, which may manifest itself outwardly as bodily deeds or speech, or remain internally as unexpressed thoughts, desires, and emotions. The Buddha distinguishes kama into 2 primary ethical types: unwholesome karma, action rooted in mental states of greed and hatred and delusion, and wholesome karma, action rooted in mental states of generosity or detachment, goodwill and understanding. The willed actions we perform in the course of our lives may fade from memory without a trace, but once performed, they leave subtle imprints on the mind, seeds with the potential to come to fruition in the future when they meet conditions conducive to their ripening. The objective field in which the seeds of karma ripen is the process of rebirths called samsara, or bondage and worldly suffering. In the Buddha's teaching, life is not viewed as an isolated occurrence beginning spontaneously with birth and ending in utter annihilation at death. Each single lifespan is seen rather as part of an individualized series of lives having no discoverable beginning in time and continuing on as long as the desire for existence stands intact. Rebirth can take place in various realms. There are not only the familiar realms of human beings and animals, but ranged above we meet heavenly worlds of greater happiness, beauty, and power, and ranged below infernal worlds of extreme suffering. The cause for rebirth into these various realms the Buddha locates in karma, our own willed actions. In its primary role, karma determines the sphere into which rebirth takes place. Wholesome actions bringing rebirth in higher forms, unwholesome actions rebirth in lower forms. After yielding rebirth, karma continues to operate, governing the endowments and circumstances of the individual within a given form of existence. Thus, within the human world, previous stores of unwholesome karma will issue in long life, health, wealth, beauty, and success. Stores of unwelcome karma in a short life, illness, poverty, ugliness, and failure. Prescriptively, the second level of teaching found in the Dhammapada is the practical corollary to this recognition of the law of karma, put forth to show human beings who naturally desire happiness and freedom from sorrow the effective means to achieve their objectives. The third section of the Dhammapada speaks of the path to the final goal. The teaching on karma and rebirth, with its practical corollary that we should perform deeds of merit with the aim of obtaining a higher mode of rebirth, is not by any means the final message of the Buddha or the decisive counsel of the Dhammapada. It is its own sphere of application. This teaching is perfectly valid as a prep or provisional measure for those whose spiritual faculties are not yet ripe, but still require further maturation over a succession of lives. A deeper, more searching examination, however, reveals that all states of existence in samsara, even the loftiest celestial abodes, are lacking in genuine worth, for they are all inherently impermanent, without any lasting substance, and thus, for those who cling to them, potential bases for suffering. The disciple of mature faculty, sufficiently prepared by previous experience for the Buddha's distinctive exposition of the Dhamma, does not long even for rebirth among the gods. Having understood the intrinsic inadequacy of all conditioned things, his sole aspiration is for deliverance from the ever-repeating round of birth. This is the ultimate goal to which the Buddha points, as the immediate aim for those of developed faculties, and also as the long-term ideal for those in need of further development. Nibbana, the deathless, the unconditioned state where there is no more birth, aging, and death, and thus no more suffering. The third level of teaching found in the Dhammapada sets forth the theoretical framework and practical discipline emerging out of the aspiration for final deliverance. If at this third level the doctrinal emphasis shifts from the principles of karma and rebirth to the Four Noble Truths, a corresponding shift in emphasis takes place in the practical sphere as well. The stress no longer falls on the observation of basic morality and the cultivation of wholesome attitudes as a means to higher rebirth. Instead, it falls on the integral development of the Noble Eightfold Path as the means to uproot the craving that nurtures the process of rebirth itself. For practical purposes, the 8 factors of the path are arranged into 3 major groups, which reveal more clearly the developmental structure of the training. That is, moral discipline, including right speech and right action and right livelihood; concentration, which includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration; and wisdom, which includes right understanding and right thought. By training in morality, the coarsest forms of the mental defilements, those erupting as unwholesome deeds and words, are checked and kept under control. By the training in concentration, the mind is made calm, pure, and unified, purged of the currents of distractive thoughts. By the training in wisdom, the concentrated beam of attention is focused upon the constituent factors of mind and body, to investigate and contemplate their salient characteristics. This wisdom, gradually ripened, culminates in the understanding that brings complete purification and deliverance of mind. In the Dhammapada, we find the call to the monastic life resounding throughout. The entryway to the monastic life is an act of radical renunciation, spurred on by our confrontation with suffering, particularly by our own recognition of our inevitable mortality. The Dhammapada teaches that just as a coward drives the cattle to pasture, so old age and death drive living beings from life to life. There is no place in the world where one can escape death, for death is stamped into the very substance of our being. The body is a painted mirage in which there is nothing lasting or stable. It is a mass of sores, a nest of dis-ease, which breaks up and ends in death. It is a city built of bones, containing within itself decay and death. The foolish are attached to it, but the wise, having seen that the body ends as a corpse, lose all delight in mundane joys. Having recognized the transience and the hidden misery of mundane life, the thoughtful one breaks the ties of family and social relationships, abandons home and sensual pleasures, and enters upon the state of homelessness. As the Buddha says, like swans that abandon the lake, they leave home after home behind. Having gone from home to homelessness, they delight in detachment so difficult to enjoy. Withdrawn to silent and secluded places, the renunciants seek out the company of wise instructors who point out their faults, who admonish and instruct them and shield them from wrong, who show them the right path. Under their guidance, they live by the rules of the monastic order, content with the simplest and material requisites: moderation in eating, practicing patience and forbearance, devoted to meditation. And having learned to still the restless waves of thought and to gain one-pointed concentration, they go on to contemplate the arising and falling away of all formations. As the Buddha said, the monk who has retired to a solitary abode and calmed the mind comprehends the Dhamma with insight, and there arises in him a delight that transcends all human delights. Whenever he sees with insight the rise and fall of the aggregates, he is full of joy and happiness. The life of meditation reaches its peak in the development of insight, and the Dhammapada succinctly enunciates the principles to be seen with the wisdom of insight. As the Buddha said, all conditioned things are impermanent, all conditioned things are suffering, all things are not self. When one sees this with wisdom, then one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purification. When these truths are penetrated by direct vision, the fetters of attachment break asunder, and the disciple rises through successive stages of realization to the attainment of full liberation. The fourth component of the Dhammapada, the highest goal, is the teaching that does not reveal any new principles of doctrine or approaches to practice. However, this level shows us rather the fruit of the third level. For the third level discloses the path to the highest goal, the way to break free from all bondage and suffering and to win the supreme peace of Nibbana. The fourth level is a celebration and acclamation of those who have gained the fruits of the path and won the final goal. The four levels of teaching give us the keys for sorting out the Dhammapada's diverse utterances on Buddhist doctrine and for discerning the intention behind its words of practical counsel. What is most needed and urgently is to train and subdue the mind. It is a quality called heedfulness, which combines critical self-awareness and unremitting energy and the task of keeping the mind under constant observation to detect and expel the defiling impulses whenever they seek an opportunity to surface. As a great religious classic and the chief spiritual testament of early Buddhism, the Dhammapada cannot be gauged in its true value by a single reading or listening, even if that reading is done carefully and the listening reverentially. It yields its riches only through repeated study, sustained reflection, and most importantly, through the application of its principles to daily life.